Good afternoon. Welcome to the Build in Digital Micro Conference on robotics and automation towards a manufactured workplace. My name's Joe Broon. I'm the publisher and managing director of Build in Digital. I'll be today's host of the micro conference. And it's my pleasure to introduce our first of four keynotes today, which is coming from Andrew Knight. Andrew is the Global AI Data and Tech Lead for the RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. Andrew, you are free to take over the screen and share your screen.
Thanks very much for inviting me along today to kick off this conference. A bit of background on me. I've been with RICS for over 13 years now, and I lead our work within our thought leadership and analytics department, looking at all things AI, data and technology, which obviously is a very, very broad topic for us as a body. For those of us who perhaps don't know about RICS, we are a global professional body, standard setter and regulator. We have 113,000 qualified members worldwide, still about 60% of those based in the UK. And we set both technical and ethical and conduct standards. And our members work right across the whole built and natural environment, and indeed across that whole land and property life cycle, obviously including construction. And they also work across all the different asset types, whether that's land itself, residential, commercial, alternative and infrastructure assets. When it comes to valuation, they value a really wide range of asset types in addition to real assets like buildings and infrastructure. My role is really to look at the whole impact of data and technology, and I do that as well as working with our member firms and members by also working with a network of around 300 data and technology companies around the world who are developing data and technology for the built environment. And that does give me a very privileged kind of view of the kind of activities that are taking place and how that's affecting the sector in every way. And so hopefully I can share some of that high level insight in the next few minutes to give you an idea and set the scene, I think, for the rest of this conference in terms of what the opportunities are and what's already happening out there in the sector. Now, I think it's generally a critique of the whole kind of built environment and the construction industry as well, that it has been slow to adopt new technologies. People do critique the kind of productivity gains that we've not seen in this particular sector in terms of construction, and the fact that a lot of methodologies do seem very, to many people's minds, very old-fashioned and very traditional. And one could argue the reasons around that in terms of the conservative nature of the sector, the fact that necessarily there hasn't been perhaps kind of the research and development budgets that you see in other kind of lines of business and other sectors in the economy. But I think what we are seeing is the beginning of a revolution, that automation in various forms and digitization, once again in various forms, are driving a revolution in the construction sector, arguably driven by a lot of external factors in terms of urbanization, cost pressures, issues around sustainability and building standards around net zero. So I think a lot of forces hopefully driving towards these productivity gains and these changes in the way of working. And clearly there is the potential here for various robotics and automated systems to transform what is obviously a very complex subject in terms of construction from both a physical perspective, but also the project management, contract management and quantity surveying and all the various different functions across the whole realm of the construction process. And clearly some opportunities here for productivity, efficiency, safety, all these kind of issues that we would obviously want to see improved for the benefit of society who want assets that they can work, live and play in. So how are they changing it? Well, we're already seeing some robotics where actually they can perform tasks more accurately than traditional workers, and that clearly will give us the output of higher quality buildings, high quality infrastructure with fewer mistakes, fewer corrections, fewer disagreements, dare I say it, in terms of the way these projects are run. And just to give you some example of some of the innovations we're already seeing, robots equipped with sensors can navigate quite complex environments. There are quite simple systems in many respects where people using handheld or hard hat-held cameras can walk around a site, gather images. Those images can then be compared against a BIM model to make sure that the asset is being built as it was designed. Various drones and autonomous vehicles working around sites. A lot of existing work where drones can do very frequent updates of the site in terms of then building AR and VR images of the site, but also measuring in terms of changes in the physical landscape of a site. So a lot of a lot of ability there to actually handle that. And also we're seeing connectivity and automation to look at site safety, where we can make sure that actually there are almost virtual barriers around parts of the site where there are dangers involved, and we can track people using wearable technology to make sure that we improve health and safety and also monitor what's going on the site. Clearly, there are opportunities in terms of material handling, reducing physical strain, having that robotic capability to handle materials in certain circumstances. So some of these things that are already taking place in that particular context. If we look at some of the challenges and opportunities, obviously, as I mentioned before, there is this whole safety and ethics situation where we can actually use the robotics and automation to really look at risk mitigation, but there are some things where we do need to think about, the impact on the workforce here, but obviously the safety of using robots. And clearly, from a manufacturing industry perspective, robots have been used for a long time now in the manufacturing sector, and there are well-trodden and well-understood ways of both looking at the ethical issues, but also making sure that when you have robots and people in the same physical environment, that those safety risks are managed in that way. And clearly, we are going to see some skills shift in terms of traditional construction professionals working alongside robots. And if we think of perhaps some of the existing modern methods of manufacturing, offsite manufacturing, we almost see this blend already where, to some extent, that offsite manufacturing is moving traditional skills and simply moving them into a factory setting, or indeed moving a factory setting to a site where you can then have sheltered and protected working environment for traditional trades to work closer to the site, but still in a more controlled environment. And I think we're also going to see, as part of that revolution of offsite and pre-manufacture, not only 3D printing, but this whole kind of offsite manufacturing approach where components, either volumetric or other components, can be built either using traditional manufacturing methodology, but also new additive 3D printing. I did see an example recently where almost an entire data center was built on site using 3D printing with a very small crew number, and it was quite an interesting shape as well. It wasn't sort of a traditional box shape, it was quite an innovative shape, and that was basically built on site using that 3D printing approach. If we look at that shift in roles, there clearly will be some shift in roles. There may be some traditional tasks that may be automated and will free up workers for higher level activities. So we're certainly going to see, I think, like in any aspect in the built environment, this change where we see new roles emerging in terms of people who have to actually manage and operate the robots, people who maintain them, people who will be working in that kind of AI space when it comes to controlling and actually managing those AI specialists, those data scientists that will be part of a new piece. So I don't think we necessarily will see a wholesale reduction in the trades, but there will be a change there. And I think it's interesting, particularly if you think of perhaps more emerging economies where they are very labor intensive, there'll be some opportunities there, but obviously some ethical issues we need to look about when we see the ability to actually look at societies where their workforce is still very labor intensive and see how that plays out in terms of getting more automation into that particular space. So for the future, I think we will continue to see this integration of robotics and automation, and I think particularly a collaboration between humans and machines, and hopefully a workforce that combines the best of both worlds. And before I wrap up, I think it's worth also thinking about the fact that we've talked here particularly around the kind of perhaps the physical construction side, but when we look at automation in general, I think for the construction sector, there's a huge opportunity now, particularly with the rise of generative AI and general automation using algorithms for that whole area around cost estimation, cost benchmarking, scheduling, the whole management of contracts, the management of variations, and all that kind of contract and project management to be automated, still with that key opportunity to have humans and automation working together and still having that key human experience. But I was talking yesterday to some market participants about that challenge of automating those current managed process around the actual management of contracts and projects and all those issues, and how there is a huge opportunity to use technology now to deal with the mass of data that is coming in PDFs and structured emails or unstructured emails, and then Excel spreadsheets, and how that can be managed more efficiently to manage that huge set of data. And if we also think of the golden thread in the UK and that need to have a persistent data set around the whole life of an asset, both during construction and then occupancy and beyond, it's really important that we think about automation also helping that flow of data, that workflow of data, and how we can maintain that and have that more accessible. So yes, let's think about what we can do physically on site, but let's not remember or not forget that there's a huge opportunity to automate a lot of the kind of document and data handling, project management, and I say scheduling also as well. I know of examples already where AI is being used to schedule large infrastructure and construction projects to look at all the possible variations of work breakdown schedules, and to make sure that we can actually optimize a project pre-construction and then reschedule as events take place during the construction process to make sure that we optimize that mix of plant, material, machinery, labor to develop and produce the right results at the best value for all concerned. So a kind of high level overview, I think hopefully that sets the scene for my fellow speakers to delve into more detail about what's going on in this sector, but huge opportunities, but also huge challenges to make sure that we implement this properly and get the right kind of output for all the stakeholders involved.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. Very big brownie points for keeping to the time there, Andrew. Very impressed. That was pretty accurate. Well done. So first of all, thank you to Andrew for a very insightful presentation there. Right, I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. Don't be shy. Have we got any questions for Andrew Knight, please?
I'm happy to offer one, Joe. I was talking, Andrew, hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I was talking to at the Women in BIM conference last week, and ethics around robotics and AI was a massive sort of topic for everybody. You mentioned it briefly with ethical issues. What do you think, maybe in summary, are the ethical issues really that we need to be sort of focusing at and making sure we're still talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, in many respects, we can think about these physical assets as being sort of low risk from an ethical perspective. But I think we do need to think about how we use particularly AI and make sure that we think about who's affected by the kind of decisions that we might delegate to AI, whether that's design or perhaps the way that a construction schedule is actually optimized, because ultimately these affect real people, whether that's the workforce, whether it's the stakeholders who perhaps occupy a building, if we're looking at design decisions and how the process is optimized. Because optimization sounds like a wonderful thing, but it's a very dry subject if you don't think about the impact on individuals. So I think the challenge will be is that regulation will often be slightly behind the curve in this area. And so I think it's then down to the sector to think, well, actually, just because we can do something within a legal framework, just because we can do something within the bounds of what is technically possible, what are the impact on real people, whether that's the workforce, whether it's the social impact of the asset we're building. So I think we just need to develop a sense of thinking about the unintended consequences of our actions and think what's the effect, and to stand back and think, well, actually, if we do radically change job roles without thinking through how we transition to that, how we reskill, how we make sure that the workforce is retained and in fact ironically is able to be brought higher up the value chain. I think we do have a responsibility to think about how we transition from different job roles, and it will look different in different economies, that we need to retain the social value of work and think, how do we upskill and retain skilled professionals within the construction sector and use automation in all its forms to take away the more dangerous, the more repetitive, the more risky operations, but not lose the human element that will remain incredibly valuable for us.
Thank you. That was quite a big topic, to be fair. Lots and lots of debate and talking around that, I guess. But I mean, the good thing is it was great to see lots of collaboration in the industry at the moment. And I think things like this and this conference we're doing today is all about that. So thank you.
Pleasure.
So I was just interested to know whether the RICS are developing a strategy for AI, if it's not already out there, for member organisations that can adopt at their level and depending on the size and sort of scale of their business. Because obviously the ethical, as we touched on there, the ethical kind of deployment of the use of AI is a concern for a lot of businesses. But shall we say, standing outside and not getting engaged with AI is also a risk to a lot of businesses and their future development as well. So,
indeed, John, no, you've hit the nail on the head there. There is a danger in not engaging, and there's also risks when you do engage and use it and don't use it responsibly. So I'm actually the technical author on a piece that we're working on at the moment, a kind of responsible use of AI standard that we're developing, and also I'll be working on some more granular practice information, as we call it, about outlining the current use cases that are out there right across the property lifecycle, not just construction, to help the professional understand where it's being used and what those risks and opportunities are. But you're right to highlight that there is a risk in not using it, and there's also a risk in using it if it's not done responsibly. So as I say, I'm currently the technical author for a new responsible use of AI conduct standard for the profession.
yeah, I'm sure watch that space with interest. Do you mind? Are you able to shine a spotlight on one of the sort of maybe one of the case studies where AI has been already being deployed in the industry to sort of good effect?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably highlight that construction scheduling piece where it's a fairly well-established firm, but originally based actually in the US, but international now, where they've been using AI, and they started particularly with very large infrastructure projects, and it was around this challenge of scheduling and then rescheduling that, as I say, that work breakdown recipe, as they call it, work breakdown, that mix of plant and machinery and labour and the timing and what kind of resources you would put into each part of the project. And whilst obviously physically a project has a degree of linearity in terms of what you build first, there's still a lot of options around how you optimize the kind of resources you put into that project and look at the trade-offs of overtime, for example, or bringing in extra, plant in at certain times. So, that's been a very useful way of looking, particularly larger construction projects, with that huge number of potential ways that you could schedule a project, and coming down to the options that then a human being can decide what's the best option, and then that challenge of rescheduling when things happen during a process itself.
Excellent. Thank you. We are going to wrap things up now. So just a quick summary from me, from each of our 4 keynotes. First of all, we heard from Andrew Knight, the Global AI Data Tech Lead at the RICS, who initially talks about membership of the RICS, but introduced a full topic from robotics and AI and how it works within the building industry, and then delved into the topic of off-site robots and off-site construction with sensors that can not only monitor safety on site, but also various other measurements, shown as a case study in 3D printing, and whole building with the data gathering and the various platforms that were available. Andrew also touched on the impact of the workforce and the impact of safety and even ethics, which opened up the idea of blending humans and their skills with machine technologies in order to collaborate together in the future. We then heard from keynote 2, which was Eva Magnusali, the founder and CEO of Dataform Lab. Eva started her presentation by introducing the idea that the building industry struggles to keep up with the demand of the amount and need for buildings across the world, and Dataform Lab technology was introduced as a good way to save time, using automation, robotics and AI to make planning and processing of buildings more efficient, and in some cases making everything speedier from a process that would take usually 4 weeks to maybe even down to 1 day, thanks to the drag and drop ability of the software platform that Dataform Lab, should I say, offers. Thirdly, we heard from Lillian Ho, who is the digital lead and senior BIM manager at AECOM. Lillian started talking about the operation of robots and the way that we in the building industry are in transition between human-centered operation and robotics right now. She touched on the fact there is a little confusion in different companies as to what is available and what can be done, and showed us some examples of what is out there to help reduce time costs and increase efficiency. Some of the examples touched on by Lillian included Machina Labs, their robotic arms used widely in manufacturing, the Field AI solution, or the robotic dog, and finally the HP Site Print, which transfers real-time site data to software used with BIM systems to help the designers. In summary, it's not about replacing the human, but it's about enabling humans to do more and reduce the possibility of human error and cost, and obviously saving time and money. And finally, we heard from Molly Claypool, who is the co-founder and CEO of Automated Architecture. Molly dived straight into the nuts and bolts of what is available in automation for manufacturing, designing and building on-site homes. She introduced to us the robotic arm and the scalability for small to large factories. And this system can obviously help to build one home in one 8-hour shift. Molly introduced us to the Revit plugin for BIM models, which again is fast, quick and efficient. Examples of the buildings created using this technology included the Winter Circus example in Ghent, the Quartier 51 dam for 150 homes. Molly is building the first robotically assembled homes in various places and has already produced 3 micro factories up and running. Her ambition, the ambition of the company, is to get 7 micro factories up and running by the end of 2025. A surprise development is the portable micro factory that is like a mobile on-site robotic factory to be used on site. And finally, just highlighting the fact that it's extremely exciting mobile innovation, offering a future insight of building homes on site, changing the way people build homes and the future landscape. So a really interesting session today on automation, AI and robotics. I hope everyone found it useful. Additionally, we also organised the Building Innovation Awards, which takes place on the 17th of October in Manchester, here in the UK. The deadline for entering is in a couple of weeks, a week on Friday. One of the categories is best use of automation and AI, something that Automated Architecture have already entered for, I believe. So please feel free to have a look at that. Otherwise, it's a big thank you from me and everyone here at Building Digital, including my colleague Gillian. Big thank you to our 4 keynote presenters. Thank you for attending, and I hope everyone found it useful.